MK the CIA's mind-bending science experiment gone wrong. Imagine this. It's the Cold War. Paranoia is at an all-time high, and the CIA thinks the Soviets might be developing mind control superweapons. Naturally, their solution? Beat them to it. Enter MK a top-secret program where scientists, spies, and questionable ethics collided. From the 1950s to the 1970s, the CIA experimented with LSD, hypnosis, electroshock therapy, and even sensory deprivation, all in an attempt to crack the human mind. Their goal? Create hypnotized assassins, brainwashed double agents, and super soldiers immune to enemy interrogation. The best, or worst, part. Most of the subjects had no idea they were test dummies. Random prisoners, unsuspecting civilians, and even government employees were drugged and observed. One poor guy, Frank Olson, allegedly fell from a hotel window after questioning the project, leading to wild conspiracy theories. In the end, MK was a complete failure. No mind-controlled spies, no super soldiers, just a pile of lawsuits and a national scandal when it was exposed in the 1970s. Moral of the story? Maybe don't trust your government to dose you with acid. Operation Northwoods, when the US planned to attack itself on purpose. Ever heard of a government conspiracy so crazy it sounds fake, except it's 100% real? Meet Operation Northwoods, the CIA's insane 1960s plan to stage terrorist attacks on American soil just to start a war with Cuba. The brilliant, terrifying ideas included hijacking American planes and blaming Fidel Castro, sinking refugee boats and framing Cuba, setting off bombs in US cities and pinning it on communists. And this wasn't some rogue agent's idea. Top US military officials actually pitched this to President John F. Kennedy. His reaction? A firm absolutely not, proving that at least someone in power had common sense. Thankfully, Northwoods never happened, but the fact that it was even considered raises eyebrows. If this is what got declassified, what's still locked away in government vaults? Sleep tight, America. The CIA's heart attack gun, a silent killer from the spy playbook. What's cooler than a silencer? A gun that kills without a trace. In the 1970s, the CIA cooked up a real-life heart attack gun because apparently regular assassinations were too mainstream. Here's how it worked. The gun fired a tiny frozen dart laced with poison, which would melt upon impact, causing an instant heart attack. No wounds, no blood, just an unexplainable sudden death. The perfect crime. This terrifying gadget was exposed in a 1975 Senate hearing, where officials were understandably shocked. The CIA, however, played it cool, like, oh, that old thing, just a little science project. Whether it was ever used in the field remains a mystery. But next time you hear of someone randomly keeling over after messing with the CIA, well, let's just say coincidences are overrated. Project Stargate, when the CIA tried to weaponize psychic powers. What do you do when Cold War paranoia is at its peak and traditional spying feels boring? If you're the CIA, you hire psychics to snoop on the Soviets. Enter Project Stargate, the government's multi-million-dollar experiment in remote viewing, basically psychic espionage. From the 1970s to the 1990s, a team of self-proclaimed clairvoyants sat in dimly lit rooms, closed their eyes, and tried to see Soviet military bases without leaving their chairs. Sounds ridiculous? Maybe. But these psychics once located a lost Soviet aircraft and even claimed to visit Mars, because why not? The military took it seriously until they didn't. By 1995, after 20 years of weird vibes and questionable results, the CIA shut it down, concluding that satellites and spies were just a tad more reliable than a guy with his eyes closed, doodling what he sees. Moral of the story? If psychics really worked, they'd be winning the lottery, not trying to mind-read enemy blueprints. Acoustic Kitty, the CIA's $20 million spy cat disaster. Imagine a world where cats are secret agents. No, this isn't a Pixar movie. It's Acoustic Kitty, the CIA's brilliantly dumb 1960s project to turn real cats into Cold War spies. The idea? Surgically implant a microphone, transmitter, and antenna inside a cat and train it to eavesdrop on Soviet diplomats. After years of research and $20 million, the CIA released their first feline agent into the field, and within minutes, it got hit by a taxi. Yes, after all that time and money, Agent Whiskers met an untimely end on its first mission. The CIA quickly realized that cats are, well, cats, not exactly the most obedient spies. After several more failed attempts, because apparently one dead cat wasn't enough, the program was scrapped. The official reason? We found that cats don't follow orders. Shocking revelation, guys. So, if your cat ever ignores you, don't take it personally. Even the CIA couldn't get them to listen. Operation Mockingbird, when the CIA controlled the news. Think the media is biased? Imagine if it was run by the CIA. Welcome to Operation Mockingbird, the CIA's top-secret plan to infiltrate newspapers, TV, and radio to control the narrative during the Cold War. Starting in the 1950s, the agency recruited journalists from major outlets like the New York Times and the Washington Post to push propaganda, shape public opinion, and influence elections. They even paid media companies to print what they wanted. The craziest part? It worked. For decades, the CIA fed stories to reporters, manipulated foreign news, and controlled information flow on a global scale. It wasn't until the 1970s that Mockingbird was exposed, and people started questioning just how much of the news was actually real. The government claimed they stopped, but let's be honest, does anyone really believe that? So, next time a headline feels too perfect, just remember, once upon a time, the CIA was literally writing the news. The Moscow Signal, when the Soviets microwaved US diplomats for 20 years. You know what's worse than being spied on? Being slow-cooked like a TV dinner, which is exactly what happened to US diplomats in Moscow. From the 1950s to the 1970s, the Soviet Union beamed low-level microwave radiation at the US Embassy, and no one really knew why. Was it mind control? A new surveillance method? Or just the world's most passive-aggressive neighbor dispute? When the CIA finally caught on, they didn't warn embassy staff. Instead, they studied them like lab rats to see if they'd develop health problems or psychic powers. Yes, really. Spoiler. They got headaches, insomnia, and possibly cancer. No psychic abilities, though. Eventually, the US confronted the Soviets, who basically said, "Oh, that? No big deal." And since Cold War diplomacy was just gaslighting with nukes, everyone moved on. Kind of. To this day, nobody knows exactly what the Moscow Signal was meant to do. But if you ever feel a weird buzzing in your skull, maybe check for Soviet microwaves. The CIA's X-Files, when spies investigated the paranormal. Move over Mulder and Scully. The real X-Files were in CIA vaults all along. For decades, the agency obsessively studied the paranormal. UFOs, telekinesis, ESP, even astral projection. Yes, they actually tried to leave their bodies and float into enemy meetings. If it was weird and unexplained, the CIA wanted in. Some highlights? Soviet psychic warriors, because apparently, mind-reading KGB agents were a concern. Documents about UFOs and mysterious craft sightings, including some the government still won't fully explain. Attempts to weaponize human consciousness. Spoiler, it didn't work. Did they actually discover anything? Well, according to the declassified files, not really. But that hasn't stopped conspiracy theorists from believing there's way more they're not telling us. Bottom line, if you ever think you saw a UFO or had a psychic vision, chances are the CIA had a file on that before you did. Operation Paperclip, when the US hired Nazi scientists. If you ever wondered how the US got to the moon so fast, the answer is both brilliant and horrifying. They hired Nazi scientists. After World War II, the CIA launched Operation Paperclip, a top-secret mission to recruit over 1,600 German scientists, engineers, and doctors, many of whom had direct ties to the Nazi regime. These weren't just any scientists. We're talking about Wernher von Braun, the guy who designed Hitler's V-2 rockets and later built the Saturn V rocket that took astronauts to the moon. The US government knew these scientists had questionable pasts, but they swept it under the rug in the name of progress. The alternative? Letting the Soviets get them first. While Paperclip helped fuel US technological advancements, it also meant giving some of history's worst war criminals a free pass. So next time you admire space travel, just remember, it came with some serious moral baggage. Operation Snow White, when Scientology tried to infiltrate the US government. No, this isn't a fairy tale. It's one of the biggest espionage scandals in US history, and surprisingly, It wasn't the CIA doing the spying. It was Scientology. In the 1970s, the Church of Scientology launched Operation Snow White, an elaborate plan to infiltrate and sabotage government agencies, including the CIA, FBI, and IRS. Their goal? Erase any negative records about Scientology and its founder, L. Ron Hubbard. Scientology operatives snuck into government offices, stole documents, wiretapped officials, and planted spies, all while posing as government employees. This wasn't just a small operation. Over 5,000 agents were involved, making it the largest known infiltration of the US government. It all came crashing down in 1977, when the FBI raided Scientology headquarters and uncovered truckloads of stolen documents. 11 high-ranking Scientologists, including Hubbard's wife, were convicted, but somehow, Hubbard himself escaped prosecution. So next time you hear about government conspiracies, just remember, sometimes it's not the government doing the spying. And that's a wrap on the CIA's most insane declassified secrets. Which one blew your mind the most? Comment below, and don't forget to subscribe.